Hi guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. Today I wanted to share with you part 2 of my fantasy author recommendations videos. Like half a year ago, back in August, I filmed my favorite fantasy authors that are adult authors. All of the ones that I most prefer. And I will leave a link to that up above if you haven't checked it out already. So you can check out my thoughts about all of these authors. I share with you 10 different authors in that video, and that's why I didn't include all of the YA and middle grade fantasy authors that I really adore. But I will do that in this video. I have 9 authors on this, but let's start out with the 10th one, because obviously I can't mention a video about favorite middle grade and YA authors, fantasy authors, without mentioning the Harry Potter books, because they are very important to me. I think they're very important for a lot of people, but if for some reason you haven't read them or your kid haven't read them, then definitely I recommend all of the Harry Potter books. I think that they are appropriate to read when you are, I would say, if you want to read all of them in one go, you have to wait till your kid is a little older than Harry is in the first book, but definitely, because like they become really dark from the 3rd book on onwards. I think the first 2 you can totally read them as like 11-year-old and not be super spooked. They fit very much with their age, I think. But by the time we come to the 3rd book and onwards, I think you should definitely consider how old the son or daughter or person is. But this is definitely also something I recommend for adults to read, because there are definitely a lot of things that you can get from these books. But I recommend maybe starting this when your kid is 13, 14, and I think they would be alright with the things that are happening. Love this series so much. It's difficult to rate because it's such a book series that means so much to me, because it's what got me into reading. So obviously there's a lot of nostalgia for me as well, but I just reread this one and I still really enjoy them. So let's start out with the other books that I really would like to recommend. I'm only shortly mentioning J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter books because everyone almost know them. So let's get to the ones that less I know about, but still, like, I think a lot of them know some of these at least. The next author I'm going to recommend is obviously Sharla McGuire and her Wayward Children. I think there are people who would argue that this is adult fiction. But this is centered around young adult or middle grade-ish characters, so I definitely think that this covers the middle grade young adult category pretty well. It is also, I think, marketed towards the young adult audience, because they were definitely... Sharla McGuire was not super popular in the booktube community before these books came out, because no one talked about her Fae books, the October Day books, or the encrypted books. No one talked about those. So it's definitely because they were marketed in a different way. And the first one in this series is In Every Heart a Doorway by Sharla McGuire. And this one, it sets off this world really well. It is about these young kids who have found doors to different worlds, like Narnia and Alice in Wonderland, kind of those type of worlds. And they find out that when you get to these places, this is the place that fits the best with them. They are able to see themselves in this world so perfectly, and they fit in so perfectly. But all of these people comes out again after they've done something that the world didn't agree with, and they've thrown out. And when they come out, they don't know how to deal in the normal world. And so they end up on this school for wayward children, trying to coming to terms with the fact they're not as important in this world, and they don't have the same things they can do in this world as they did in the others. And people look a little strangely at them, but they don't do that at this specific school. And then this specific school, they are also just letting them try to rediscover their door so they can go back. This one has a sort of a mystery, and a lot of people don't really enjoy that part of it. I didn't know about it at all when I started it, but I still enjoyed it a lot. I think they're extremely quick reads, and they have a lot of diversity in them, as well as the people who are with a different sexual orientation than yourself, probably. There are people who have mental issues. There are people who are like larger, like fat positive people in this one. So it's definitely good for that in all of the books. So this is what they are all about. So the first one is called Every Heart a Doorway. The second one is called Down Among the Sticks and Bones. The third one is Beneath the Sugar Sky, which is my least favorite of this series. The only one I gave less than 4 stars to. And In an Absent Dream. And finally, the most recent one that came out in January this year is Come Tumbling Down. And in terms of my favorites, the favorite one is Down Among the Sticks and Bones, followed by the last 2 ones, In an Absent Dreams and Come Tumbling Down, and then Every Heart a Doorway and Beneath the Sugar Sky comes after that. But all of these 5 books are definitely worth the read. They're really fast reads as well. They're a bit expensive to get in the hardcovers, but if you can get them from the library or anything, I definitely suggest trying them out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So yeah, definitely enjoyed all of them. My least favorite one is this one, and I gave it 3.5 stars. All of the other ones I've given 4.5 or 5 stars. So definitely recommend them. Another author I'd like to recommend is Tamora Pierce. Tamora Pierce has written all of the Turtle books. I have so far read the first 4 in that world, and that contains the Song of the Lioness quartet. The first one being Alanna, the First Adventure, the second one being In the Hands of the Goddess, the third one is called The Woman Who Rides Like a Man, and the fourth one and last one that I've read is called Lioness Rampant. Overall, this was a 4-star series for me. I definitely really enjoyed it. I like the discussions about women and young women, like when they are just about to get like coming of age sort of time period, and I like the world it's set in. I really enjoy the magical part of it. I like the fact that it combines her wanting to be a knight as well as she is able to do these fun magical things. It has a lot of things that I really enjoy in fantasy books. I enjoy the trope where people go undercover sort of in the guise of another and hide themselves, and the first one does that a lot, and I really enjoyed it. Alanna is obviously a girl, and girls in this world are not allowed to become knights, but her biggest wish is to becoming a knight. So when she finds out that her brother doesn't really want to become a knight, they sort of switch places, and they're twins, so she goes in as though she's her brother under the name Alan instead of Alanna, and definitely goes in and does knight training and keep hiding the fact that she's actually a woman. And although that there's some problematical things about the fact that women can't do this, over the course of the books, I feel like you get to see people's opinion shift about a little bit. So definitely enjoyed it and will very highly recommend it. And I'm looking forward to reading on in the series universe over the course of the year. I am taking a little bit of a break from them right now, but I will probably get back to it in a couple of months. The next series that I would like to talk about or recommend is their How to Train Your Dragon series by Cressida Cowell. I've only read the first 2. It's a 10-book long series, but they're really fast reads and they're really fun. They're very different than the other middle grade books I've read. They are a little, I would say, for the younger middle grade audience, I'd say you could definitely start reading them when you're 11, but they have a little bit of a rude, crude language sometimes. But it's set in the Viking ages. These people are Vikings, but they are also no dragons, so that is the magical ability. The first one is called How to Train Your Dragon, and it's not really the same as the movie. They're both really great, but this one is quite different. It follows Hiccup Horrendous Haddock. It says that on here. It's as slow as he's the writer, but yeah, and he is from living in this world, and they have all of these dragons. There are a lot of different type of dragons, and it is the most important thing is to be able to train these dragons and control them. And Hiccup is the son of the leader of this clan, but he is not really good at this whole being a dragon trainer thing. He is not good at anything. He is actually, his father is a little bit embarrassed about him. But Hiccup is able to speak Dragonese, and in this world you're not allowed to speak Dragonese, but he argues that it's a necessity in order to at least train, and becomes famous for the fact that he can do this. But the first one is about him finding Toothless, his dragon, and shifting things around a little bit. And this one, how to be a pirate. He is going on a piracy thing with Toothless and his friend. I forgot his name. But they are very, very fun, and they're very easy reads, and I definitely am enjoying them. And I have purchased the third book so I can get to the next one soon-ish. So I definitely recommend them for quick, fun adventures. Another author I'd like to recommend is Tom Fletcher. Now, Tom Fletcher is probably, his books are more definitely younger, very young middle grades, even kids' books, I would say. So I decided to add them in here because I think he writes really, really good books. His first book was the Christmassaurus, and my sister currently has that book, so I can't really show it to you. But I have Christmassaurus and the Winter Witch, which is also a book by him, and then he wrote The Creakers, which is a sort of scary book with monsters under the bed. I decided to include it in the fantasy category because it is sort of magical and whimsical, because it features Santa. They go to the North Pole, and it features this dinosaur that's called the Christmassaurus. So yeah, it definitely has some magical elements to it, but it's not straight up fantasy like all of the other books I'm mentioning. But this one is more in the slightly magical but mostly contemporary type from this stack. But I do really love the way that Tom writes, and I think he has some really, really cute illustrations throughout. This one is with the Christmassaurus on the toilet. Anyway, I do really enjoy them, and I read this back in November, shortly after it came out, and adore them still. The next series that I would like to recommend to you is the Last Apprentice series by Joseph Delaney. This is also known as something else that I've forgotten. I keep forgetting the other name of this series title. Wardstone Chronicles. It came to me now. I've just been talking about this series in a library hall and I couldn't remember it. The Wardstone Chronicles is also what the series is called. And I really enjoy them. I've read the first 2 books in this series, and I enjoy the way they're written. I enjoy the tone of the series, like the ominous type of feel that you get when you read them. It's slightly urban fantasy-esque. It has some spiritual type to it. Our main character is able to see things that other people can't, so spirits and dark spirits and stuff like that. It's a bit creepy, but I really have been enjoying them. They're super quick to read and get through, and I definitely recommend them. I am currently loaning out the 3rd book from the library, and I hope to get to them soon. So I definitely also recommend these. They are not talked about as much as some of the other books, but I know some people really enjoy them. And they're definitely straight up middle grade books, I'd say. And our main character is the 7th son of a 7th son, which makes him the last Spook's apprentice. A Spook's apprentice is able to see magical things that are not there, as I said before, and so this is that, and he is trained from this spook. I think that's what it's called. Looking forward to see what's going to happen with him. But I gave both those books 4 stars, so I definitely enjoy them. Another author, I can't talk about YA and middle grade fantasy being a Dane and not talk about this author. He is called Caribou Alison. Caribou Alison is phenomenal in the YA fantasy author spectrum. I think this series has started to become translated. I think the first 4 books have already been translated into English. I think the first 2 or 3 books have been adapted into audiobooks, and the last 2 books are going to be translated over the next year. So you can definitely read all of them. The first one is The Devil's Apprentice, and it follows this boy called Philip. Philip is basically known as though he is a good boy, you know, the one who never does anything wrong. He is really good with other people. He's being bullied a lot by other people because he can't really stand up for himself. And one day when one of the bullies is about to be hit by a car, he saves him, but the problem was that that boy was supposed to die on a day, but instead Philip dies and go to hell and has to become the devil's apprentice, because the devil is sick with some disease that is explained more in the series. And so he meets all of these characters who are sort of devils in training, and it's just really, really funny. It has definitely a dark tone to it. I think they remind me a lot of the way that Joseph Delaney writes his books, so I think they are similar in the tone, but the type of books are completely different. I definitely enjoy them so much. The first one was a little... I gave the first one 4 stars, but the remaining 3... How many books have I read from this series? 4 books, right? Yeah. The other 3 books I've read from this, I gave 5 stars to all of them. The second one is called A Die of Death. I think Die of Death is actually the actual title, but I will put the cover of it here. And that one definitely won me over completely. The way that he talks about dying and how the world, the way he just talks about this afterlife thing, and the way he talks about religion and this thing that people... The thing is that happens in this one is that people have stolen the Die of Death, and the Die of Death is one that death uses in order to determine how old people are going to be. So he throws a die and it has 100 sides. So whenever he throws it, that's how many years they're going to get. But someone stole it, and so he can't do that, and all of those people becomes undead. So like everything stands still in terms of that. And it gives a really, really creepy vibe to everything, and he just explores it so well. It sort of reminds me, I read Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett right alongside this one, and it reminds me a little bit of that book, but in a completely different tone, and it handled a completely different way, and I really, really admired the way that he wrote that one. So highly recommend the series, if not just for that book, because I think then if you read this one and enjoy that, then you would definitely want to read on in the series. But I've really, really been enjoying them, and I really enjoy some of the side characters. Satina has really been developing a lot over the series. She is one of the female characters in this series, and there's a cat called Lucifax. Pretty cliche names, I know, but that cat is also really, really awesome. So definitely recommend Caribou Alison as an author, and I'm looking forward to reading on in other series. I've also read a couple of other things by him, but this series is the only thing that's been translated, so that's why I recommend this one. We have a storm in Denmark again for the 3rd weekend in a row. It either storms and rains, storms and rains, like it's never ending. The next thing that I want to recommend to you is my new obsession in terms of middle grade fantasy, because you might have heard of them because they are all over BookTube, and before I read them I had never heard of it before, but then suddenly everywhere I looked, this book was everywhere I looked after it was nominated in the BookTube Best Awards, and that is the Nevermore Serious by Jessica Townsend. Now the Nevermore Series follows this girl called Morrigan Crow, who is her fate in life reminds me everyone a little bit about Harry Potter, and the whimsical part of this series reminds people of Harry Potter, but it's not the same thing. But our main character Morrigan Crow has been treated horribly by people around her all her life. She is about to turn 11, and she has been blamed for everything that happens that is not good in life. No matter what it is, she's to blame for everything, because there's a curse surrounding her that on her 11th birthday she will die. But as midnight strikes on her 11th birthday, a man comes to her home, and called Jupiter North, I think, and he takes her with him to Nevermoor. Nevermoor is this magical place that is living alongside everything else, and it is filled with magical things, and she has to go through some trials to prove herself that she can be part of Nevermore forever for the Wondrous Society. Yeah, so that is that. And the sequel, Wondersmith, is even better than the first one. I didn't know if the second one will be as good, but I definitely loved it, and I'm so eager for the third one coming out this year. And the second one, she goes back and she again has to go through some trials in order to find out who she is. She finds out who she is late in the first book, and everyone hates her because of what she apparently is, but it definitely takes a little bit of a darker tone in this one than the first one, but they are so whimsical still, and I think that everyone who are middle graders should read this because they are so beautifully written and so has so many things to offer, and I can't wait to read on in it. I get the same feeling of when I read this as I did when I read Harry Potter, so it definitely says a lot about the books. But they're not the same thing, and I love them. 5 stars for both of them. Looking forward to the third one so much. The next author I want to recommend is another author that's really, really popular on BookTube, but he has been really popular since forever. And it is Riordan, who writes the Percy Jackson books as well as the Heroes of Olympus. Those are the 2 series that I physically own. Percy Jackson is about the Greek mythology. Percy Jackson is half god, and he is the son of Poseidon. Because of him being the son of Poseidon, he goes to the Camp Half-Blood, where he meets a lot of other people just like him, who are sons or daughters of some of the gods and goddesses of the Greek mythology. In this one we continue, and this one is different because this one, while the Percy Jackson series is only told by Percy Jackson's perspective, the Heroes of Olympus series follows after Percy Jackson and follows different characters, and it shifts perspectives between 5 or 6 people, I think. And I prefer this one to Percy Jackson, but I really enjoy them both. I think they're excellent middle grade books. I think a lot of people will definitely enjoy these. They have a similar vibe to the Harry Potter universe, that they go to this camp every year where they meet up with all of their friends, sort of like Harry Potter have to go to Hogwarts every year. So I love it about that. Another thing, I've also read the whole Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series, which follows the Norse mythology. And there's also the Trials of Apollo series, where I've read the first 2 books, but I still need to read the remaining 3. And then I haven't read the Kane Chronicles either, but I want to read them. So I definitely recommend Riordan for quick and fun middle grade reads, and they have very specific type of humor. So if you like one of his books, you like all of them because of the humor is always present. But I definitely do enjoy them. The next author I'd like to recommend is V Snyder, who writes the Poison Study trilogy, and there's also the Glass trilogy, and then a direct sequel to this series with the same characters. But I've only read the first 3 books in this series, and I really have enjoyed them. Poison Study was 5 out of 5 stars. I think actually these 2 are also 5 out of 5 stars, but I feel like they're more like a 4.5 stars now. I don't prefer them as much as the first one because I like the setting of the first one a lot better. But I do recommend this series as a whole. I think V Snyder does a really good job in writing this fantasy series, and I definitely recommend it to anyone who enjoys YA fantasy. This is definitely YA. It is following a girl who is supposed to die. She has been trialed for something, and so this person comes in and gives her a chance. The only thing that she can either die or she can become the poison taster and have to taste everything that the commander has to eat before he eats it, to make sure that no one's poisoned it. And she finds out all about antidotes so that she can take antidotes when she feels the poison, so she knows the difference in the different poisons, and it's super interesting in that way, and I really enjoyed this first one. And she becomes friends with some people that are so amazing, and she finds out he has magical abilities, which is super forbidden in this world, which is why this one is set in a different setting, because she escapes and starts living with other people with the same abilities. That is actually her own family, but I prefer this one to these two. But as I said, I recommend all 3 books because they're all pretty good reads. The last author I want to recommend, because I think, again, this is an author that's been talked about a lot, but I feel like there's a very big difference in opinion about these, but I do really enjoy Richelle Mead. Richelle Mead is one of my favorite urban fantasy authors, and I've talked about urban fantasy in a different video, and I was unsure if I was going to be including urban fantasy in this one, but Richelle Mead was not super mentioned in those videos, I think, but I'll leave both recommendations video down below. In one of them I talk about the difference between urban fantasy and paranormal romance, and the other one I just talk about my favorite urban fantasy recommendation because it was a babbled topic, and I'm pretty sure that Richelle Mead was not mentioned. But I've read both adult and young adult urban fantasy from her, and I really enjoy both types. So let's talk about The Vampire Academy and Bloodlines. Vampire Academy is the first series that you should read, because this is a spin-off to that. This follows Rose. Rose is a Dhampir. Dhampirs are half vampire, half humans. They have excellent strength. They are able to protect regular vampires called Morois, which is the type of vampire that they can protect. The Moroi have magical abilities, but they're not very strong. So our main character as a Dhampir is able to protect the vampires, and that's her job. So she's sort of in training to that. I hate the sort of trope that is used, because this is a student falls in love with a teacher kind of thing, and it's definitely problematic in some places. But at the time I read it, I didn't feel anything about that. So I wonder how I'll feel about it on a reread. But I do really enjoy the characters, all of the characters from this series, and I enjoy her way of writing them. And the sequel follows a character that is introduced in the second book of this series called Adrian, but it also features a character that is introduced. I think she's not introduced until the 4th book, because I believe she was in Russia when we discovered her, and she's called Sydney. I haven't talked about Strigoi. Strigoi is the lethal vampires, the ones that we know about in horror movies and horror stuff. They don't have magical abilities, but they're insanely strong, and they don't have a soul left, so they are mean. And yeah, Sydney is sort of knows about the vampire, this whole world. She is a human, but she is protecting regular humans from knowing about this world, so she is hiding evidence that these people lives. And she goes with some of the characters from the Vampire Academy to Palm Springs in California, and that's where this one is mostly set. I prefer this series over this one, but just definitely read this one before you read this one. So yeah, I really enjoy both the series. I didn't want to pick up all of the books because there are 12 books, and I still have to read like 5 or so more of Richelle Mead's books before I've read all of them, but I do really appreciate her, and definitely also enjoy her adult urban fantasy, and recommend especially the Georgina Kincaid series. So yeah, this was everything I wanted to talk to you about today. I've been filming for 40 minutes. Hopefully I can edit some of it out so it doesn't become too long, but the first one was also half an hour long, so what is half an hour anyway? Definitely let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these authors and what your thoughts were on them. Are you planning on trying out any of these authors after I've been talking about them? Are you surprised about some of the books, the authors that are on here? And are there any of these authors that you haven't heard of before? Also let me know about that, because I feel like that would be fun to hear. And finally, definitely let me know in the comments down below if you have any recommendations of YA or middle grade fantasy authors or kids write fantasy authors. that I haven't mentioned today. Maybe I've already read them, but I've only read one book because that's sort of my rule. I want to have read more than one book by an author before I include them in one of my recommendations video, like when it comes to recommending an author, because I feel like I have to get to know their way of writing a little bit before I can make a informed decision. But yeah, definitely, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye!